Okay, with the Eibishter's help, today's daf is Masechta Bava Metzia Daf Mem Zayin. We're starting from Daf Mem Vuv Omid Beis, the last line. So just to discuss over here, we all know that to buy something, let's say you're buying a car, the best way to buy it is pay the cash. Show up with the money, give the seller the money, and you get the car. But there's two other ways to effectuate an acquisition. One way is, let's say we're trading baseball cards. So I give you mine and you give me yours. So that is a trade. That's an kinyan. And therefore that's another way to effectuate an acquisition. A third way to make a kinyan, and this is the important point. The important point over here is, let's say I'm going to buy a car. Let's say I'm going to buy a car. I don't have the money yet to pay for it, or I didn't bring money, but I want the car and I don't want him to sell it to anybody. So what I would do is I would take a pen from my pocket, a little pen, give it to the seller, and the seller holds on to the pen, and by acquiring the pen, he agrees to sell me the car. Okay, so that's called chalipin. Okay, very chalipin. Okay, you don't have to come with the money to make the acquisition. You give a pen, let's say a pen, and the person who's selling the car will take your pen and say, you can have the car, and there's no backsies over here. So no one can back out. So look at what Rabba bar Rav Huna. Okay, so we're starting from Mem Vav and Beis. Today's daf is Mem Zayin. Amar Rabba bar Amar Rav Huna. Rabba said in the name of Rav Huna, B'chor li be'elu. A guy goes to somebody. Let's say he says, I want to buy your car. And he's holding on to a wad of cash. We don't know how much money is in his hand. And he said, sell me the car with the money that's in my hand. The kana. So by the seller taking the money, the acquisition is final. However, we go to the top of the page, Mem Zayin, v'yesh loy olav ayna. There's the din of ayna of if the money did not reach to at least within a sixth of what the normal price of that car is, then the seller can say, I didn't realize you didn't give me enough cash. So in a certain way, there's no backsies, and in a certain ways, there is backsies, So let's say that you counted the money, it's a $5,000, but the car is worth $100,000. So of course, the seller has a right to back out. So the Gemara explains, Kana, the acquisition is final, afagav deloy moshach, even though the person who's buying the car did not move the car or take it. The fact that he gave over this money, he's not acquiring the car for payment. Basically, he's acquiring the car as with the other acquisition called chalipin. The fact that you're giving him something, so the seller thinks in his mind, I want to give him my car. The kaven dolly kaput, since the seller did not count the money or wasn't concerned what was in your hand, he didn't ask, tell me how much is in your hand. He just took the money. Kana, so the acquisition is final. The chalipin dummy. It is similar to chalipin. However, the yesh loy olav ayna, but there is a problem of ayna. If he didn't pay the full amount or near the full amount of what the car is worth, then the seller can say, I didn't realize that you're not giving me the full amount. Why? Because the purchaser said, I want you to sell it to me with this. So basically, the purchaser is saying, the only way I'm paying for this car is what's in my hand. So now there's a din I know. You have to pay. You can't rip the seller off. So because of that, therefore, it's the buyer who cannot back out, but the seller could back out. So it's like in between a chalipin and a regular purchase. Rab Abba Amar Rav Huna. Rab Abba says the name of Huna, and he says like this: Mechar li ba'eli kana. If your guy says, the purchaser says, sell me the car with this in my hand, kana, then the acquisition is good. Ve'ein loy olav ayna. Rab Abba said in the name of Rav Huna that there is no ayna over here. In other words, the seller can't back out because the seller took the money. And it must be that he said, okay, I'm giving it to you. And this was the price that they agreed upon. So there is no ayna over here. That was Rab Abba's saying in the name of Rav Huna. So the Gemara says like this, Pshita, it's very simple. Domim ve'ein makbid aleim. If a guy says, here's money, and he's not makbid on what it is. He gave money or an item for another item. Okay, so let's say it's trading cell phones. So they're not examining how much is your cell phone worth my cell phone. They're trading baseball cards. They're not examining what's everything worth. That's hakamrinim. The kani we said before, that acquisition is final. The chalipin dummy, because that's a regular barter. If we're bartering, right? I'm giving you a baseball card, and you give me a baseball card. If you're not like looking, who am I giving you, and I'm not looking who you giving me, so then the sale is final, because that's called chalipin, a barter exchange. But what happens? Chalipin umakbid alehem. Mao. What happens if you have a barter exchange, but the guy says, "What are you giving me exactly? I'm very concerned that we should be almost equal with each other. Is that is that is that a is that a final acquisition or not? In other words, if they don't turn out to be equal after the exchange happens, is there backsies? Can you back out? What's the din? And the Gemara is going to give you a nice example over here. Amar Ravada bar Rabba said, Toshma, come in here. The guy was carrying a cow and going into the marketplace. And his friend came over to him and said, why are you carrying your cow in the marketplace? This is not a place for cows. So the guy said, I want to purchase a donkey. And this is the only thing I have. I have a cow. So basically what he's saying is, I want to exchange my cow for somebody's donkey. So the friend said, I have a donkey that I want to give to you. So parascha bakama, how much is your cow worth? Kach v'kach, it's worth X amount. Chamarcha bakama, so he asks about how much is your donkey worth? Bakach bakach, it's worth X amount. So they didn't say, they're not exactly equal. So what happened? Moshach bal hachamar esapara. If the bal hachamar did Mashicha on the cow, right? So only one person did the acquisition. There was not enough time. Balapara limshach es chamar. The balapara did not have time to do Mashicha on the chamar. At shemes chamar, the donkey died. So did the balapara lose out because the chamar guy, took already possession of the balapara? Says the Brisa, loy kona balachamar sapara. The balachamar did not acquire the cow. So why didn't the balachamar acquire the cow? Somebody did and there's backsies over here. In other words, the balachamar has to return the cow to its original owner. So why? Shmami enough, because here you see from here halipin umakbedal, if they're doing a barter exchange, as long as even if they're concerned that they're not, it's not an equal trade, loikana, it's not a final acquisition, and they both can back out of it, and that's why they can back out over here. His chamar died, so therefore the bala para wants to back out of the trade, even though the bala chamar did mishicha on the para. So that's a proof. Kalipin umakbin loikana. If they're makbin on the barter to be exactly the same, it doesn't work. Rava said no, but it does work. Every time you look in the Chumash, all right, I don't know through Tanakh, but you certainly find in Rus, whenever there's a barter exchange that the Chumash is talking about, it's never equal, and yet it works. It's a final exchange. Delay kapti. So shufte delay kapti, and they means, in other words, they don't exactly try to figure out that it should be exactly the same. So, and nevertheless, despite them being close to being the same, it's a final sale. So it's definitely chalipin umakbid aleim. It's a final sale, because if it's if it's a complete barter, even though they're not exactly, it's a final sale. So why didn't it work with the chamar and the par? They seem to have a final agreement. Anytime there's a barter exchange, if they're concerned that it's equal and it's near equal, kana, it works. It's a final exchange. But the Bryce is talking about the amalei, because the chamar guy said chamar beparvetle. The bala chamar said that I'm going to give you my donkey, but you're going to have to give me a cow and a sheep. So the bala chamar or mashach hasapara, he started doing mashicha on the cow, But he didn't even finish doing Mashicha on the sheep. So he didn't even know, not one party completed half the acquisition, because the Bala Chamor was supposed to do a Mashicha not only on a cow, but also on a sheep. The Lehav Mashicha Malia, because he didn't do Mashicha, a good Mashicha. Therefore, if the Chamor died, then the whole transaction is null and void. Nu Gemara. Amama, we learned before. Machar li be'elu. Kanu. V'yesh alav ana. Guy shows up, let's say to a car showroom, and he says, "Sell me the car with whatever is in my hand." Kana, it works. V'yesh alav ana. But if the seller who took the money and then counted it up and realized that he sold the car for much less than what it's worth, he can back out of it because of the din ana. So that was what we learned. Rabbah said in the name of Rav Huna. So Lema Sava Rav Huna. So how did it work? Why is the sale happening? It seems that it's not happening because he's saying this money is payment for the car. Because if that was the case, then the seller of the car should have counted the money first before taking the money. So Elamai, it must have worked because it's money, and money could be used as chalipin. Like we're familiar with chalipin with like you're going to go to the rabbi to sell the chametz, so you have a let's say $10,000 worth of chametz in your house. You're going to give the rabbi is going to give you a pen, and then you're selling him the chametz that's in your house, basically. So or you're giving him the right to sell the chametz. So that could be work with a pen. Can you use a dollar bill, and then with you receiving a dollar bill from the rabbi, sell him the chametz that way through chalipin? Does that work? So Rav Huda, it seemed to say that the money could be used as chalipin. And that's not true, because we learned in the Rus that chalipin happened with a shoe, not with money. So there was an opinion that matbeyas should not work with chalipin, and it seems that Rav Huna argues in that mandiyama. That what effectuated the kinyan over here is because the coins, the money, was like a mini barter, right? And therefore that's how it worked. And not everybody would agree that coinage could be used as one of the tools to make a chalipin transaction. Answers the Gemara loy. Not true. Really, it's not working because of chalipin. When a guy says, "I'm buying this car with money in my hand," he actually wants to purchase it. This is the money that he's buying it. And Rav Huna Sava like Rabbi Yochanan. Rav Huna holds like Rabbi Yochanan that as soon as you give over the money, once the guy accepted it, it automatically works. The Amar, Rabbi Yochanan said, "Devar Torah Maris Kanis." In normal Minat Torah, money, if you pay for something, you own it right away. That's a given. You own it right away. And now, Minat Torah, you can buy something just by paying for it. But Chachamim said it doesn't work. The Chachamim made such a transaction null and void. You can't just go over to somebody, "I'm buying your wheat and here's money." It doesn't work anymore. And you have to do a Mashicha to the wheat. Why did the Chachamim say that Mashicha is the only thing that works? Let's say you're buying an animal, you have to do Mashicha. You can't just pay for the animal. And it doesn't work. So the real reason is because let's say you're buying wheat, and if you paid for it and you didn't take it home from the store, so if there's a fire going to break out, the person that sold you the wheat is not going to do anything to save your wheat. Why? Because he took your money already, and the transaction is final. So in order to prevent that from happening, Chachamim said that just by paying for money does not work. Just transfer of money does not effectuate an acquisition. The only way it works is if you do Mashicha. But that's in a normal scenario. Milsa d'shchicha gazer rabbanim. A regular transaction, the rabbanim made a gzera. Or milsa d'loy shchicha loy gazer rabbanim. But this transaction, when a guy shows up to the car salesman with a wad of cash and says, "Take it from me," and the guy didn't count the money, so it's a milsa d'loy shchicha. It's not a common transaction, and therefore we default back to the original Minat Torah, that as soon as money changes hands, the acquisition is final. And that's how it worked over there. Not because of Chalipin, because it worked, because we revert back to how everything works in the Torah. In Minat Torah, normal, and if you want to buy a movable object, all you got to do is pay money. And so therefore, that's how the Gemara established that perhaps Rabbi Huna holds that Membeya does not become Chalipin. And that so Amalei Mahuna Breder of Nachman Ravashi, so Rabbi Huna said to Ravashi, Atan Hochamas Nisla, Anam Hochimas Nisla. You have that proof from over there. I have it proof from over here. I have a clear proof. The Chain Amar Rav Huna Ein Matbea Nasa Chalipin. And money cannot be used as Chalipin. You can't use money as Chalipin. You have to use, let's say, a shoe or a pen to make Chalipin. And so it must be that the only reason why Mechor Li Be'ela worked over there is because we revert back, we make the exception over there, that over there, money, mo'is is kaina, the way it is in the Torah. Now, now the Gemara is new Gemara. Anytime you're going to go to the rabbi and you want to do chalipin, right? We have seen this before, or maybe by a chasana, whatever it is. So chalipin is very simple. It's not clear, but let's say, who gives the pen? Who gives, let's say, the scarf or the pen it's usually the purchaser gives it to the seller, and the seller in his mind says, okay, I'm selling you my item. Obviously, the purchaser, by giving his pen, is not saying that the pen is the way I'm buying this item. I still owe you that money. Let's say he's buying a car. Just by giving a pen to the seller doesn't mean that that's how you're buying the car. The car becomes yours, but you now have a loan that you owe the seller the money of the transaction, the money of the sale. So who gives over the pen? So I've been telling you the purchaser does, but that's not so everybody agrees to that. But Matt Koinen, how do you do chalipin? Rav says bekelev shel koina, the utensils of the purchaser. The purchaser wants the seller to acquire his item that he's giving. In my example, he's giving a pen. So that in his mind, the seller will have in mind that now that he received your pen, he's going to sell you his car. Okay? The Levi says, wait a second. I'll give you the reason later, but it's actually the seller giving you the pen. And then he's having in mind that not only am I giving you the pen, but I'm going to give you also the car that I'm selling you. So the Gemara doesn't understand that. Is it working because he's selling you the pen, he's giving you a pen, and then along with that, you can buy, let's say, a piece of property. Let's say they're selling a piece of property. So he'll say, you acquire the pen, and along with the pen, you're acquiring a property. But that never works. That shouldn't work. According to Levi, that it's working with the seller's utensils. If in case, let's say the seller gave his handkerchief, and then he wants to also sell, the seller wants to give him a piece of property, so he's selling first he's selling the handkerchief, and then he's giving a piece of property. But that doesn't work. And came having nechosim sheyesh lemachrayis, niknim in nechosim she'ein lemachrayis. Vanan ibchetanam nechosim she'ein lemachrayis, niknim in nechosim sheyesh lemachrayis. That usually it's you purchasing a piece of land and you acquire the movable items on it. You acquire the tractor that's on the land, but you're not acquiring first a piece of handkerchief, and along with that, one kinyan will allow you to get the land. That doesn't work. So how did Levi understand? Gemara wants to understand what is the mechanics of how Levi is explaining chalipin with the items, utensils of the seller. So the Gemara says, Amalei, if Levi was here, so Rav explained to Rav Huna, he would hit you with a fiery whip. Because you misunderstood Levi. Do you understand that when the seller gives over his handkerchief, is that what he's selling to the purchaser? No, he's giving him a gift. And he benefits by the acceptance of the purchaser of a free gift from him. He gets a benefit from that. And by with enjoyment that he sees that you can accept the gift from him, now he can 100% in his mind's eye, sell you the property or the car or whatever he wants to sell you with the item. So basically, it's a machloikis amaroyim of who has to give the pen. Is it the purchaser or it's the seller? And that tells you a machloikis and how to learn the rus. Kitanoi, it's a machloikis tanoim. V'zois lefanim b'Yisrael al haguula v'al atmura l'kaim kol davar shalav ishna aloi v'nosan l're'eu. There's a pasuk in Rus that describes this concept of kinyan chalipim, and it says you should take your shoe, take off your shoe and give it to your friend. Geula zi mechira. A geula is a sale. Let's say you didn't have money for the sale, but you wanted to make the sale effective, so there's no backsies. So the Tumura is if you're trading near equal items, two baseball cards. Zu chalipin. That's chalipin. So how do you make it effectuate? L'kaim kol davar. Shalav ish nali, take your shoe off and asal re'eu. By taking your shoe off and giving it to your friend, that finalizes the acquisition. So the question is, me, nasal me. In the Rus, who gave to who? So Boaz, nasal nagoya. Boaz was the purchaser of the right from his relative. So he gave his shoe to the relative, and the relative sold him the rights to the land. Rabbi Yehuda says, no, goyal nasan Boaz. It's the seller, which was the Pliny Almoini. He was the seller gave his shoe to Boaz, along with, by Boaz accepting that gift, now that made that seller, the relative, say, I'm giving the land to Boaz. So it's relevant on how to learn pshat in that Gemara. Tana, we learned to the Brisa. You can use a vessel, you can use a pen, or even though to make the chalipin, even though it's not worth a penny. But you have to use something that's an item, a utensil. A piece of fruit, fruit doesn't work. You can't use a fruit as the item that you're going to help do the chalipin. You could use fruits. My time of the Rab Nachman. Why does Rab Nachman say you have to use a utensil? The pasuk says that you use the shoe. Now, and only a shoe, yes. You can't use anything else. My time of the Rav Sheshes, but what's the reason Rav Sheshes that you can use even a piece of fruit? It says that if you want to effectuate anything, you could use anything. So that's how he learned pshat. Rav Nachman Oksiv, Nami Oksiv L'Kaim Kol Davar. Doesn't the Perus say that to make everything you can use Kol Davar, anything? It's the subject. You can effectuate any type of kinyan, whether it's karka or whether it's metaltalin. You can use a shoe, but it has to be a shoe. Rav Sheshes Namai Haksiv. Now the Gemara asks back on Rav Sheshes, but doesn't Rav Sheshes? It says Haksiv Nali. It says they use the shoe in Rus. Rav Sheshes will tell you Ma Nali Dovar Hamsuyim. It's an example. A shoe is something that's a complete item. Av kol davar hamasuyim. You can have to use a complete item, like a ballpoint pen is a complete item. La puke, although you can use a fruit, chatzi remain v'chatzi agos the law. You can't use a half a pomegranate or a half a walnut. That's not. It has to be a full thing. Amar Rav Sheshe b'rei Davida. Kaman kasiv noidona. How do we write when we're writing up a chalipin document? That's what happened. We write the following words: b'mona, the kshar, the miknebei. They use the mona, kosher, to purchase with this. B'mona, it means lapuka midrav sheshes. They used a vessel, a utensil, to that we don't hold like Rav Sheshes, that you can use a piece of fruit. Dama kaim in Paris, it had to be that the chalipin utensil was actual utensil. This shar, we use something that was kosher and nice. Lapuka midrav Shmuel. We exclude Shmuel. To Omar, he said, koinim, b'maraika, we go to Amid Beis. B'maraika, you're allowed to use a vessel that's made out of manure, dog manure. So even though it's not a nice vessel, you could still use it. Shmuel says you could use it. So we say you can't use it. L'miknei, la'puka mid Levi, the purchaser gave it. That you're purchasing it and not selling it. So we don't hold of Levi that it's the seller that gives the item. Bay, only this works. You can't use a coin as the chalipin item. No, you can't use something that you can't benefit from. Others say Bay, excluding a matbeya. And Dikshar, no, you can't use something that you can't benefit. Alva Marika, not to use a smelly vessel. Loy Itzrach, we don't need you to tell me that. We don't even have to write that down because in the halachas, it's obvious you can't use it. It has to be something nice. So I guess when you go to the rabbi to sell this chametz, you'll see they give you a pen, you give back a pen, and et cetera, et cetera. All right, another 2 minutes and then we'll stop. In the Mishnah, it said, Asiman koinin es hamatbeya. With an asimon, you could use a barter to use asimon with a matbeya, with a coin. In other words, asimon, the Gemara uses the strange word called asimon. My asimon. What is the meaning of the word asimon? Amar Rav says, Mois hanitonis bisamen lemerik merchat. It's a token that's given to the bathhouse keeper, so he knows how to keep track how many people are coming in and how much water to heat up. So that's what an asimon. It's not a coin. It's a coin that's used only in the bathhouse, but not a currency. Meisvei. So the Gemara is going to ask a question on that definition of what an asimon is, because the Mishnah says, Ein mechalem mois sheni sheni al asimon. Don't transfer the kedusha ma'aser sheni on an asimon. V'loy al mi'ois and tanis b'simin lebeis merchat, and not on the money that's given as a token to the bathhouse. So it's bichlal dasimon lav mois and tanis b'simin lebeis merchat. They're not the same. They're not one of the same. One is an asimon, and the money that's given to a bathhouse is another type of coin. Are you going to tell me that Mishnah is just explaining it? They both equal. So we see from these brises and from these mishnayos that an asimon is not defined as a token that's given to the bathhouse keeper. So what is this asimon? Rabbi Yochanan says, "My asimon pulsa." It's a coin that's not yet stamped with a picture on it. So it's like you went to the mint and they didn't finish producing the coin. It's an unfinished coin. Rabbi Yochanan Tameid, Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Shmuel, Amri Dover Echad, Rabbi Doisa, the Amrin, Rabbi Shmuel, Mahi, the Tanya. We learned to the Brisa. And from this brisa, we're going to see that asimon is something that does not have a picture on it. Tanya Ritzarta Kesab Yadecha. Ma'aser Sheni has to have a picture on it. The rabbis call Adava Hanitzra Biyad Divrei B'Shmuel, that only something that you hold in your hand. So even though it doesn't have a picture on it, but it's something that you hold on to. Rabbi Shmuel says that, and that would work. Rabbi Kiva Omer, the rabbis called Dova Sheyesh Olav Tzura. So that only has a picture on it. So comes out, Rabbi Shmuel holds that an asimon is a type of coin that's not yet with a picture on it, and nevertheless, it would be still good for Ma'aser Sheni. Anyway, that's just the Gemara just defining what an asimon, and we'll continue with this discussion of how acquisitions work with movable items. And we'll do that tomorrow, B'ez Hashem.